We're good to go, Ben. So welcome to everyone to this meeting of Cabinet tonight on the 7th of November. This meeting is being streamed live to the Cheltenham Borough Council YouTube channel and recorded for training purposes. So welcome to any members of the public who are watching the meeting on the YouTube, and welcome to the public present. What I do need to say is if you make a representation to the meeting, you are consenting to the use of the sound recordings for broadcasting and training purposes. What I also have to say tonight is that, as you will all be aware, temporary measures have recently come into force to increase security at council meetings. CCTV and audio recording is now in operation in the public gallery, and recordings will be held for 5 months. Whilst this is regrettable and the council remains committed to making decisions in open session, it is essential that meetings and council business can be carried through safely, efficiently and without disruption. In the event of persistent disturbance, I will have no option but to adjourn the meeting and ask those causing the disruption to be escorted from the chamber so the council can continue to efficiently make and take the decisions that we are required to make. That leads us on to section 1, which is the procedural matters. I have apologies from Councillor Wilkinson in place, and Councillor Atherstone said that she had a work commitment in Bristol. She was hoping to get back, but she may be a bit late. Can I ask, are there any members who's got any interest to declare? I'll take that as a no. The minutes of the last meeting, which can be found on pages 5 to 18. Do any members have any comments that they wish to make on those minutes? No? Can I therefore...
2 sets of minutes, just to clarify.
In fact, there are, yes. My apologies. So we've got the 28th of September extraordinary cabinet meeting minutes, but we also have the 17th of October 23 cabinet minutes. Do any members have any comments on either set of minutes? Councillor Lewis.
Only that I can only vote on the first set because I was absent for the second.
So can I see a show of hands for the 28th of September minutes to approve? Thank you. And then can I see a show of hands for the approval of the minutes of the 17th of October, please? And that's one abstention because Councillor Lewis was not here at that meeting. So thank you for that. That leads us on to public and member questions. We have 2 questions tonight, both of them from Mr. Thomas. And the first question was to Mr. Thomas was given to, the answer was given to you. Are you happy to take that answer, the question as read and the answer as given as read? Yeah. And do you have a supplementary, Mr. Thomas?
So this is...
It's very dark up there.
Hi, first of all, I've got a bit of a chest infection tonight, so apologies if I come across a bit croaky. My first question is to the Cabinet Member for Cyber.
Sorry, Mr. Thomas, is the first question I've got, do you have a supplementary for Councillor Lewis?
I do, yeah.
Would you like to put that question first, please?
Yeah, sure. So this is about geoengineering and the effects it's happening, that it's happening in Cheltenham. So in response to Councillor Lewis's answer, in 2007, Dr. Rosalind Peterson gave evidence for half an hour to the United Nations Council of the deliberate stratospheric aerosol injection, which is destroying wildlife and ecosystems, and which governments around the world facilitate on their unsuspecting populations through the military-industrial complex. One only has to look up at the skies in Cheltenham and observe the incessant oil slicks across the sky. Yet we are made to believe that it's the likes of me and you who are to blame for climate change. CO2 makes up 0.04% of the atmosphere, and humans contribute 4% to that total, meaning that the net effect is 0.0016%, i.e. meaningless, even if you do consider CO2 to be some kind of dangerous toxin, despite the fact it is needed to support life on Earth, and without it the plants would die, and we would die also. My question is this: CO2 does not cause climate change. Geoengineering is the cause of climate change. Why aren't you coming clean about the real cause of man-made climate change instead of blaming it on people's cars?
Councillor Lewis.
If the public questioner wishes to supply the evidence for the claims he's making, I'm willing to respond, but prior to that point, I will not. Thank you.
So, Mr. Thomas, if you'd like to submit your question and with the evidence that you've referred to in your supplementary question, if you could let our Democratic Services have that information, and then in due course, Councillor Lewis will respond to you. Thank you. So your second question and answer to Councillor Collins. And I appreciate that in the first instance you sent the question in directed towards me, but actually what we do with the questions, we pass the questions to the relevant cabinet member, because actually, frankly, you'll get a better answer because they've got a far more detailed knowledge of their portfolios than I have. I have an overview of all of it, but they know the detail of their portfolios. So if you have a supplementary, would you like to ask that of Councillor Collins? If you could try to keep it to a question rather than a statement, that would be very much appreciated.
So the Golden Valley development is a major change for the residents of Cheltenham and will affect everyone living here. I've recently seen a leaflet that says the development would comprise of 350 homes, yet the website today says 1,000 homes. So it seems to be very contradictory. Not everyone might want a smart district cyber hub which facilitates the agenda of our corrupt government. Whether you agree with the development or not, all Cheltenham residents should have been consulted, and a sample of 7,500 households, if we accept this at face value, is not sufficient. Why weren't all Cheltenham households notified and given a chance to make representations before the green light had been given to go ahead? Thank you.
Councillor Collins.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Thomas, for your supplementary question. I'm going to try and help you out a little bit here. The leaflet you're referring to is only part of the Golden Valley development. It's not the whole thing. That's NEMA that you're referring to. The question that I read that you sent to me was I've taken it as about the whole of the Cheltenham Borough Council's involvement. So I know, I'll start off by saying that I'm happy with the consultation that's taken place on this project so far, including all of the public consultation. I'll once again reiterate some of the main points. I know that you've received, in response to your recent FOI request, the comprehensive statement of community involvement that was compiled by our consultant, HGH. For everyone's benefit, because they may not have seen that document, there were 4 social value stakeholder engagement sessions based on community, culture, economy, environment, where interested groups were invited to take part and ask questions. And I was there for most of those, and I thought there were some very interesting questions asked. You've referred to the 7,500 homes that received leaflets, highlighting the public consultation events. In fact, there were 2 leaflets that were sent to 7,500 homes. There were 2 public consultation events held at Gloucester that were attended by over 130 people, and many of those provided feedback. A further 29 people provided feedback using the online system that was set up. There were more than 350 people who attended the 2 sessions that were held in the pod on the Strand, and many of them provided feedback too. There were more than 2,300 visits to the project's website where they could leave feedback. There is a dedicated Golden Valley Development website full of information about the project. The Borough Council's own website contains information about the project. Not to mention articles in the press, including Gloss Live, Punchline and the BBC. All of CBC's and our development partner HBDX and Factory social media platforms, they contain articles and information about the project so far. So I'd like to say I'm more than happy with the level of public engagement that we have made. And as I've said in my written answer to your original question, there will continue to be multiple opportunities for residents of our borough to provide feedback and comment on this project as it moves forward. And just to make one final reference to the Statement of Community Involvement, on page 3, point 17, it says, the Statement of Community Involvement therefore fulfills a requirement of Cheltenham Borough Council as well as the government to engage appropriately with local communities at the pre-application stage. And of course, when you put your question in, it was at the pre-application stage. So I read that as Cheltenham Borough Council being completely compliant with their responsibilities to take public engagement. And if you read it another way, the government are happy with what Cheltenham Borough Council are doing as far as public engagement on this exciting project go. So if the Borough Council are happy and the government are happy, then I too am happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. Thank you, Mr Thomas, for your questions tonight. That now leads us on to section 2 of tonight's agenda, which is the section 3 from overview and scrutiny and other committees. So there are no matters that have been referred by Cabinet from any of the other committees to Cabinet for tonight. So then that leads us on to section 5, which is the reports for from Cabinet members. Tonight's corporate advertising and sponsorship policy is 5A on our agenda, and that's the report of Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Leader. Okay. I hope that you've all had the chance to read the report and the new policy itself. The policy was introduced in 2015 originally, but it hasn't been updated since. So I thought it was important to bring it up to date because there have been so many changes in that time, and I wanted to make sure that it's still in line with the Council's corporate plan priorities. And if Cabinet agrees to adopt this new version tonight, it will be reviewed again in 2027. Council must ensure that it meets with current best practice and legislative requirements, as well as being aligned to this Council's core values and principles. The actual policy itself is quite short. It's only 12 pages long, so it should be reasonably easy to understand and digest. The definitions or information contained within it are helpful and clear. It also contains links and guidelines to national local authority best practice on which this new policy has been based. So CBC haven't reinvented the wheel or done our own thing, so to speak. It brings us in line with many other authorities. I don't want to speak for too long, but I will draw colleagues' attentions to point 5.5 in particular to stress that the policy does not contain an exhaustive allow list, as this would be exclusive and something really important could be left out. But instead, it promotes a deny list, so an individual application can be assessed to ensure that it meets the policy. The policy does contain a list of points at 6.3 of some types of advertising that are definitely not permitted. But again, as stated, this list is not exhaustive, so we do have to keep an eye on that. 6.4 does contain a list of potential impacts that must be assessed before an application for advertising or sponsorship can be approved. And finally, I draw your attention to point 8.3. This states that the head of commercial and income generation is responsible for implementing the policy. So if there are any issues, that we can make sure that we cover them off with that officer. I hope that Cabinet colleagues are able to support the recommendation to adopt the updated corporate advertising and sponsorship policy and for it to come into effect immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. Any member got any questions? Has any member got a comment that they'd like to make on this policy? Councillor Lewis.
I just want to commend the Cabinet member and the officers involved in this project because I think it's been long overdue, but it's also, I'm really happy with the quality of the overall document. I think the approach that seeks to be permissive with very clear guidelines is absolutely the right approach in our slightly weird and exciting advertising world. And I do think some of the steps forward we're making just make us far more robust and far clearer about what it is that we believe in and what we stand for as an authority. So thank you to the officers and to the Cabinet member.
Thank you. I just would like to also welcome this. It's one of those policies that has needed to be done, but given where we've come from, because prior to COVID, we were actually doing quite well on our advertising policy and actually helping to generate some income to help our revenue budget, which, you know, at the end of the day, every little bit helps this authority to carry on delivering services. So I really welcome the update of this currently now, and thank you, Councillor Collins, for bringing this forward. Do you want to sum up at all?
No, not really. I just would like to say that we've spent quite a bit of time with the officer team putting this together, and I actually quite like it. I think it's short, it's succinct, it's not overcomplicating anything, but it does cover all the things that it needs to, and I think it's quite easy to follow. I wish that some of the other policies were that easy to follow. Thank you.
So can I ask Cabinet to adopt the updated corporate advertising and sponsorship policy as at Appendix 4 that's to come into immediate effect? If I could see a show of hands. That's a unanimous decision. Thank you. The next report is on tonight's agenda is as many of you, well, all of you, not many of you, all of my Cabinet colleagues, you know that we invited the Local Government Association in to come along and have what we call a peer challenge report. I will just say what that is for the benefit of those that are watching and listening. So councils don't have to do this, but obviously all councils benefit from learning and development. So what happens is that you get a team from the Local Government Association in, so it'll be members and officers. They come in with a very, if you like, a section that is absolutely prescribed of what they look at and investigate, but we also ask them to perhaps look at additional things. So they came to this authority during the summer. What's expected of the councils at that point is that they publish the findings in full of their findings, and which is what this is about tonight. So that there is the full report there for people of the findings that the peer review team found. But alongside that, what they also require of the authorities who take part in these peer reviews is that they publish an action plan. And then you invite the local government peer check team back again in whenever, up to a year can be. We are planning, so we've developed our action plan. We took significant actions, as you can see already, to put in place some of the recommendations for improvement. Just one of those was to revisit, for example, Cheltenham Borough Homes, and that which we've already put in motion. So what I'm hoping to do is that we will be inviting the LGA peer team review back in February next year for them to have a review of the findings and what we've addressed at that point. So is there any member who'd like to make a comment about this report? Councillor Jeffries.
My apologies, Leader. Thank you. Yeah, I've been through a number of these peer review and peer challenges over the years, and it's I think they're hugely beneficial because we can all get set in our bunkers or in our little bubbles in the world, whether it's in our workplaces or as a council, and you tend to not look outside that sometimes. So actually having that external view, and if you look at the officers and the people and the councillors involved in that peer challenge we've just been through, it's quite an extensive list of experience and knowledge, and so they're always beneficial. But I actually like the first line or first paragraph in the executive summary of the report, which sort of reflects us as a town. And the second sentence is, CBC sets high standards for the council and the town in order to build a better future for everyone. Well, that about sums up what we do as a council, but I'm glad they've encapsulated that in that report, because we do set ourselves high standards, and by having these peer reviews, we're making sure we're meeting those standards and looking for improvement. I know that the local authority sector is going through quite a lot of change again at the moment. We've been through the austerity years. We also went through COVID, but I think financially we're going through a lot of change, and we've seen lots of reports in the media about those changes that are going to be coming for some of those councils. So having this report, this look at ourselves, you may say, is hugely beneficial, and I think working through the action plan, again, will undoubtedly pay dividends. So I'm really supportive of this process and the outcome. Thank you, Dean.
Councillor Clucas.
Thank you, Leader. I just want to make a couple of comments about pages 11 and 12, where the report looks at No Child Left Behind and at the work we've done with the care organisation and also to tackle deprivation. It mentions that all our schools are involved, but actually there's a great deal more involvement in Cheltenham than our schools. We have our NHS partners, we have our businesses, we have the Chamber of Commerce, we have a whole host of organisations that are keen to help those young people who are in real difficulty in relation to what they have at home and what is available to them. That has been a tremendous privilege of which to be part. I couldn't say it any more than that, and I have to thank both the council and our officers for the work that's been done over the last 3 years. The idea, I was talking to somebody the other day, that in Cheltenham we have just under 5,000 children living in poverty where they could not access the help they needed. I have to say, Leader, was an incredible blow, because that's not what you expect of Cheltenham. What you expect of Cheltenham is, hang on, we've got decent houses, decent schools, everything's running, great high street, all of that. And then this comes home to you. And it came home because we had a child, a 5-year-old, excluded from school. And when we began to examine that, we discovered that Cheltenham had more people excluded from school than anywhere else in the county. Now that was in 2018. And since then, things have moved on and changed. But I have to say, Leader, that could not have been done without the commitment of this council, of my colleague, Councillor Jeffries, and of you before that in relation to funding the work that needed doing, because Cheltenham is not responsible for this work. It's a county issue, and yet nothing was being done. And so what I'd like to do through you is thank all those organisations who've been part of this, to say that as a council, we will learn from this report. And that says we need to tell people what we're doing more often so that they know exactly what's happening in Cheltenham. That will be done, Leader. And obviously, by so doing, hopefully we'll attract even more organisations to the work that we're doing, providing a better future, a better life for all our children and all our young people in Cheltenham than perhaps they might have expected 5 years ago. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Councillor Clucas. Can't see any other member indicating to say anything. I think I just wanted to pick up on something that Councillor Jeffries said, is that actually, you know, it is good to look outside at what you do, and I actually I take advantage of the fact that I'm a local government peer review. So I go to other authorities to do those reviews. One of the big things I get out of that is, oh, that's a good idea, I'll take that back, I'll have that. Take that to Cheltenham. You know, so it's a two-way street of learning and benefit, because you're looking outside at good practice or good ideas elsewhere. So whilst there's not any recommendations that we need to vote on, it does ask us to note the LGA Peer Challenge report, Appendix 2, but it also asks us to approve the Peer Challenge Action Plan that's in response. So if I could see a show of hands for the recommendations. Thank you very much. That's unanimous. So that takes us on to agenda item 5C, which is the report of Councillor Jeffries on the council housing benefit and council tax support penalty and prosecution policy. Too many P's.
Thank you, Leader. Colleagues, Cheltenham Borough Council is a member of the Counter Fraud Partnership. Within the partnership, there's the Counter Fraud Enforcement Unit tasked with reviewing and administering a number of policies on our behalf. The Council Tax Housing Benefit and Council Tax Support Penalty and Prosecution Policy. A bit of a mouthful, but very much needed, as I think is encapsulating that title. It's attached at Appendix 1, and it provides us with the necessary framework to deal with cases of fraud and error in this area. Now, dealing with and handling public money comes with a level of trust. With the risk of fraud ever present, it is incumbent upon us to take actions to mitigate against those risks. I'm sure colleagues will be aware this council takes tackling fraudulent activity very seriously. Now, colleagues, there have been a number of minor changes to the policy in order to be aligned effectively with current legislation. Also, some amendments to reflect the duties and responsibilities within the Department of Work and Pensions, some of those changes. There's also been some amendments, and this provides the continuity across the Counter Fraud Partnership, so that obviously they can undertake those investigations in this area. Now, the policy was considered and endorsed by our Audit, Compliance and Governance Committee in September, but also the relevant council department officers and One Legal have also been consulted. So I've got nothing really further to say apart from to put on thanks my records to Emma Cathcart and her team. Emma's here this evening. She's the head of the service for Counter Fraud and Enforcement Unit. And I commend the report to you, Leader. Thank you.
Is there any member who would like to comment on this report? Councillor Atherstone.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, just a very short comment from myself when reading the report is that it's really important that we have this policy in place because ultimately it's protecting public money where it's meant to go to support those really in need. And so I'm really pleased that we've updated our policy so that we can protect that money for the people that really need it.
Can't see any member wishing to speak. Councillor Jeffries, you don't wish to come back. So can I see a show of hands as per the recommendations, please? And that's a unanimous decision. Thank you very much, members. That now leads us on to agenda item 5D, which actually is Councillor Jeffries as well. It's the Local Council Tax Support Scheme.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, a shorter title on this one. Each year, colleagues, since 2013, the council has been required to set its local council tax support scheme for working age residents. Now, council tax support for pensioners is not localised and continues to be provided by a national scheme. Funding for the scheme was rolled into the Revenue Support Grant and subject to annual cuts. As this council no longer receives any Revenue Support Grant, it must fund its share of the cost of the scheme itself. In 2019-20, we approved a new scheme. One of the main aims was to ensure that the most vulnerable and those with the lowest incomes continue to receive 100% support. The proposed council tax support scheme from April the 1st, 2024 for working age people will continue to be based on the 5 income bands, with the highest band providing support to 100% of the council tax liability, then reducing to 80%, 60% and so forth. Now, many residents are still grappling with the cost of living crisis, and this period of sustained high food inflation is particularly concerning. We know that those residents on the lowest incomes spend a disproportionate amount of their income on food, and this scheme will provide some vital help and support to those most financially vulnerable residents. Continuing to provide this council tax support scheme across the 5 bands will mean approximately 4,483 residents are eligible. As of October 2023, this equates to just under £4.3 million of support. I trust colleagues will be able to support the recommendations in the report. I would like to draw your attention, however, to the 4th recommendation. This one is particularly important because at this stage it is uncertain by how much welfare benefits will increase next year. The government usually announces this increase in late December, early January. But because of this, we must be in a position to adjust the support we provide with the assistance of this scheme. This will ensure that the financially vulnerable residents are not placed at a disadvantage if, I say if, and when changes to welfare support levels are made, hence the recommended delegation. I'd like to thank all the officers in the Revenue and Benefits support teams for what continues to be an extraordinary amount of work supporting our residents in the town. And I commend the report to you, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffries. Any member? Sometimes when there are things that we do that sort of go below the radar in many ways, and you know, Councillor Clucas was talking about the level of support that we've given to No Child Left Behind. And for me, this is just an extension of that. And it's one of those things, those times where, you know, we as a council made that decision that I'm still inordinately proud of, is that we made that decision, and every year we make that recommitment, because we don't have to do it. I haven't actually done the numbers, but each year there are less people who give 100% of council tax relief to that very, very needy minority of people. And I'm really proud that we still cover that off. So I'm sure you're all going to support this. But if I could see a show of hands to adopt the recommendations as they're set out. Thank you very much. It's unanimous. That now leads us on to briefing session, our briefing session. So if I'll go right to left because I'm left-handed. So if I go to Councillor Collins first.
Thank you, Leader. After you going left and right, and I haven't got anything to say, so thanks.
Councillor Lewis.
Just a quick update, because I like to update when we spend money and it does some good. I'm excited to say that having just hired a very exciting new interim manager for the Climate Change Department, we're going to be making some really good use out of that data we collected from the smart systems we paid for previously at council in some of our core buildings to start developing our new strategy for carbon reduction on CBC properties. So let it not be said that the money I spend is not spent wisely. I'm very excited to see the results.
Councillor Doby. Thank you. Councillor Clucas.
Just a very quick one, Leader. It's to say that next week we actually begin our Interfaith Week. And that's open to everybody in town, whether they are a member of a faith community or not, to take part, to meet with others, to chat. Even the Indian community has invited people to go for a vegetarian curry, which I think is lovely. But you'll have to register for that beforehand because they don't want to miss people out because everybody has flooded them. So, Leader, I just want to say I hope everybody enjoys the week. I hope people get a great deal from it and our community benefits from it. And I will certainly be, I hope, going for a vegetarian curry. And I hope all colleagues will join me.
Councillor Horwood.
Thanks, Leader. I just want to welcome Chris Gomm to the Council, who is our new Head of Development Management. And this is a role frankly, we've struggled to recruit over the last couple of years on a permanent basis. But I'm very pleased that Chris has joined us. He's joined us from Bath, and he promises to be a very able new Head of Development Management. And this is part of what was, of course, the Head of Planning role before we split it into Development Management and Policy. And one of his first priorities will be to tackle enforcement issues where post-COVID we inherited something of a backlog of cases, and developing an action plan to tackle planning application enforcement is a high priority for Chris, but I'd really like to welcome him to the authority. I think he's a great addition to the team.
Thank you. Councillor Atherstone.
Thank you, Leader. I too wanted to mention Cheltenham Interfaith Week between the 12th and 19th of November, and just to say how delighted I am to accept an invitation from the YMCA, who in partnership with Cheltenham Interfaith and Cheltenham Borough Council are hosting a Faith in Housing event, and just like to welcome those leaders of all faith groups to that particular event on the 15th of November. You can find out more information about that online. I believe there's a QR code to scan to register your attendance. And we're particularly focusing on how together as communities within Cheltenham can tackle and prevent homelessness.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffries.
Nothing at this time, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got a couple of things I just wanted to mention in briefing. Is I attended last week a housing homelessness summit that was organised by Eastbourne Council as an initiative, and what they did is they pulled some 168, there were, or 160 odd, I can't remember the number exactly now, of councils. They then also joined forces with the District Council network. So they were heading towards 300 people at this. And I mean, the difficulty for all of us as local government is the struggle that we've got in terms of homelessness, because it's not, whilst it's our statutory responsibility, when the government decide that it's time to close hotels, a lot of those people will then come to the local authorities in terms of housing. There are a number of authorities across the country that are facing potential 114 notices, not because of their revenue budgets as per se, but because of the increase in homelessness, which we have to address. And it's really important. So I was very pleased that I went to that summit, but I also signed up to lobby before today's King's speech from all of those councils to lobby the government to say that actually the very specific, and I will be publishing that letter to go out so that all members will see it, and in fact the public can see it as well, which I think is right, because it's an important point for a great many of our residents, and potentially some of our residents who will fall into that trap, sadly, of being made homeless through no fault of their own. I think that was the main one I wanted to mention, but and I will be bringing that to full council to say that I've done that, as I say. But that's the end of the briefing, because I've actually forgotten, because I found that actually very challenging, that attending that summit, because there were some real horror stories out there of what's happening, and it made national news and picked up, you know, actually as an example, two young women with children finding themselves completely homeless and on the street through no fault of their own. So I have conveniently or inadvertently forgotten the other briefing bit I was going to do, but I can do that another time. So that's the end of the member briefings for today. There is the next agenda item is decisions made by Cabinet members. I believe we have one decision, and that's the decision of the Cabinet member, Councillor Dobie.
Thank you, Leader. The purchase of these 3 refuse collection vehicles has already been pre-approved by Cabinet as part of the Strategic Vehicle Fleet Replacement and Improvement Programme. However, I should like to take this opportunity to highlight and remind that Cabinet decided in December 2021 to transition away from using mineral diesel for its vehicle fleet, including its refuse and recycling vehicle fleet, and instead to move towards using certified palm oil-free hydro-treated vegetable oil to fuel HGVs, and to replace smaller vehicles with electric-powered versions where possible. And as this decision illustrates, this is exactly what we're doing, and we're doing it to help to reduce pollution and also to combat climate change. Thank you.
So there are no other items that I, as leader, determined to be urgent or that require a decision, and therefore I will formally close this meeting at 20.